And joining me a short time ago was Michael Shifter, president of the Inter-American Dialogue. Thanks for joining us on the programme. Cuba has denied involvement in this, but realistically, who could be behind this if not Cuba?
Well, there's a lot of speculation. Nobody really knows. Cuba could be behind it or not behind it, but what really, I think, is hard to reconcile is whether they didn't know, if there was somebody else involved, if the Cubans didn't know. They're very good at this kind of intelligence and monitoring, and so if another party, a third party, was responsible, likelihood they would know about it.
Cuba has now said this could affect the relationship between Cuba and the US. In a negative way, it could strain things. How do you see things in the relationship now?
Well, I think this is clearly a setback in the relationship, and the Cubans didn't want this to happen. Foreign Minister met with Secretary of State Tillerson on Tuesday, came up to Washington because there was a suggestion that the closing of the embassy in Havana, the U.S. embassy, was under review. And the Cubans clearly don't want this to happen. They want to avoid this kind of decision. It's clear that the embassy is still open, but there's been a reduction of personnel by 60%. They're no longer issuing visas to Cubans at the U.S. Embassy. So this, I think, sends a very strong message, and more than anything, it's a psychological blow, I think, with possible economic implications and costs for a country that's already in dire straits.
But relations were already strained between Cuba and the US, given President Trump's announcement that he was going to roll back some of the relaxations that President Obama had brought in the relationship.
Absolutely. No, this is already, but it was a partial reversal of what Obama had done. There were some measures that changed, but it didn't go to the extreme that many Cubans feared. So they felt they can live with that. They're waiting for the regulations on that announcement, which should be published in the next couple of weeks. But this, I think, sets it back even further. And so it's a really tremendous disappointment, I think, for the Cubans. They're concerned. I think they want to get to the bottom of it. There's a lot of guessing done by a lot of people of what exactly happened. But until I think the situation is clarified and there's a good investigation, we're going to be in this limbo, very difficult situation.
Can we expect any other action or response from the Cuban government, any sort of retaliation?
I don't think at this point. There was talk that the U.S. would also ask that the Cubans reduce their personnel at the embassy in Washington, but the United States hasn't made that request. I don't think the Cubans are really in a very difficult position. They want good relations with the United States. The economy's in terrible shape, and the Cubans are looking to try to get back on a solid footing, and they need the investment, they need the business, they need the tourism from the United States. So anything that cuts into that is going to be a real problem for them.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much for joining us, Mr. Shifter.
Thank you.